All right, everyone, let's take a look at our... All right, everyone, let's take a look at this cladogram based on DNA evidence. All right, so I'm going to start off with humans here, and when I look at this chart, the human has the least amount of differences with a lion, it looks like. So I'm going to just start off by drawing a short branch here. All right. Another thing you could do is you could create what's called an outgroup. So I'm going to look at the one that has the most differences, and it looks like we got like octopus at 95 right here, same thing with the lion 92, and so I can maybe draw the octopus all the way over here. All right. That's called the outgroup. It's the one with the most differences. It could be a helpful reference point. Other times it could be a helpful reference point to start with the ones that have the least amount of differences. There's multiple ways you could go about it. All right, so now if I look at humans, the next closest is we have humans, and the starfish for humans looks like it's 50 right here, right? And so that's more than 15. So I'm going to make a line here for starfish. All right, then the question is, do I put the octopus here or do I put it over here? Well, when I look at the octopus, 92 differences between lions and octopuses, and for humans and octopuses, 95 DNA differences for that particular sequence. So that's actually more than starfish, which means we need to put it further down on the list. All right, so this actually goes against all the models that we ended up coming up with. Right, where starfish don't branch off of octopus over here, we actually share a more common ancestor, starfish and humans, than compared to the octopus and the cuttlefish. So that's pretty wild. Like, that is not something that I would expect. So what's going on there? All right, it turns out the common ancestor between humans, starfish, and octopuses would have looked something like this incredibly simple worm thingy. All right, no eyeballs or anything. The most rudimentary nervous systems. Think of something maybe a little bit more advanced than a jellyfish. That's about it. All right. And maybe about the same in terms of like nervous system as a jellyfish. So not much going on there. All right. So of course we have furs are a common trait between lions and humans. But wait. What's the thing that makes starfish more related to humans? It turns out that when you do a little bit more digging, that they're deuterostomes, where octopus and cuttlefish are what we call protostomes. All right, you don't need to know this for this class, but what that means is that during the early stages of development, here's like a zygote, and then you kind of form like that cell starts doing mitosis. All right, eventually you get this blob of cells that starts to fold and form this opening. If you're a protostome, like an octopus or cuttlefish, that becomes your mouth. And then the anus ends up coming afterwards, right? And so, again, you're just this like multicellular tube here. Food goes in, food comes out, you use it for energy, you do things, right? Starfish and humans are what we call deuterostomes. It's the opposite. When we start to form this just ball of cells and it starts to fold in to form an organism, that opening first becomes the anus, and then the other part becomes the mouth, right? So it's literally like the very, very early stages of development, all right, kind of like simple, or I don't want to say simple, but we're really getting to the early stage of development where we could say like this is the traits that starfish and humans share in common. So we split really, really early on, all right, which to me is absolutely wild that intelligence evolved independently of one another, right? Like this organism was not intelligent. It had a very rudimentary brain, right? But this population splits off, and independent of one another, right? You start to get a brain with cognition and intelligence that could pass the self-control test. And the same thing happens in octopus and cuttlefish. They're pretty intelligent organisms, right? And all of that evolved independently. In addition, this common ancestor didn't have an eye. The eye also evolved independently, which to me is absolutely wild. So a couple things about that is that we could also look at the eye of an octopus and the eye of a human. And even though they might look similar, like, oh, there's like this lens, there's this optic nerve, right? It seems similar. The retina is actually kind of backwards in a human. It's really weird. Where light enters our eye, it bounces off the edge of our eye here and hits our retina. All right. And because of that, we have this blind spot where our optic nerve has to leave. If you look at the eye of an octopus, its retina is kind of on what is the more efficient side right here, where light just hits it directly. There's no blind spot. All right. And so what that suggests is that, yes, like it just makes sense for an eye to evolve in this way, right? To be able to perceive light in the environment, right? Where you have this lens, this kind of like area right here, this optic nerve going to the eventual brain. But there's also these pieces along the way that didn't happen in this exact same order. And so you end up getting these parts of an eye that are, or these eyeballs that actually are different, even though they might look similar. So this brings us to an important concept of biology, which is called convergent evolution, right? It's this idea that you could have this common trait that was not shared in the common ancestors. So here's a good example. Birds, butterflies, bats, they all have wings. They could fly, right? But their common ancestor did not have wings, right? They all evolved wings and flight independently of one another. Another example is if we look at fish, reptiles, mammals, their common ancestors did not have that dorsal fin, that like tail fin, right? But it just makes sense. If you want to go fast through the water, you're going to evolve these structures. They're the most efficient. They're the best structures to be able to accomplish you moving through the water. All right. So that's convergent evolution. All right. No shared common ancestors, similar traits. Then you could have divergent evolution. This is where our typical speciation, you have a common ancestor, and then you form different traits from that common ancestor. So kind of a cool and important concept in biology.